Okay, so what we're going to do today is talk about some different strategies for you to be more collaborative, maybe to tell your story better, in hopes that we'll help more people choose your business in strengthen Fairbanks' economy in doing so. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about getting us all on the same page in terms of how the economy works and why it's important that people choose your business. I think that a lot of times people get confused that I do this work simply because I love small local businesses. I am a small local business and I do love small local businesses, but actually that's not why I do this work. I do this work because we, as small businesses, actually create local prosperity at a higher rate than those that are non-local companies that move into our communities. Now, obviously there's a lot of different kinds of non-local businesses, and some of them are base industry sector, and you have some very large ones here that have driven your economy for a long time. And we're all very appreciative of that, but at the same time, it's really good for us to diversify the economy, just like we would diversify our portfolio. We don't want to have all of our eggs in one basket, and we need to make sure that our economy is diverse and thriving. And local business plays a key part of that. So for those of you who weren't here before, just a little bit more about me. I'm a small business owner. I have a music store that I've had for 30 years, and I have an art gallery and performance space that I've had for about 18 years. And those businesses, I joked in the earlier session that, if you still have a record store and you're still standing, you got to be doing something right. In addition to having the onslaught of big companies that came in selling music, then obviously we have Amazon, and then we also have digital downloads as well. So if I've got people coming into my store still, last year was the best year we ever had, and we'll be 30 years old in May. So I'm excited to talk to you about what small business can do to better compete. Then we're going to be talking about some strategies for collaboration, and we're going to be talking about how you can tell your story. I realize we've got a couple of hours in here, so I'm going to take a break right in the middle so that you have a chance to catch your breath and use the restroom and those kinds of things, and then we'll continue on with some workshops. So the first thing I want you all to understand is that you're actually, just by being locally owned, you're part of a movement. How many of you knew there was a movement going on around the country that people are shifting their spending to locally owned businesses? Just a few of you? Okay. So when I started Local First Arizona, there were 4 coalitions of local businesses across the country. This was in 2003. We did not know each other at all. We all just came to the conclusion that, hey, wait a minute. They're subsidizing big companies that are retailers to move into our communities that are actually eliminating jobs here in our community, and we're paying them to do that. And I started to get a little outraged about that. I mentioned it earlier. You're familiar with Cabela's? Cabela's store in my community got a $68 million subsidy. They got a 10-year tax abatement, which means if you go into Cabela's and you buy something, you pay your sales tax, they get to keep it for 10 years. It doesn't go to our libraries. It doesn't go to our fire department, right? Bass Pro out in Mesa, Arizona got a $32 million subsidy. Walmart's in our state were averaging $25 to $30 million in subsidy per store. And so I started to think, wait a minute, the first economic study came out in 2002 that showed that when you spend money at a local business, 3 times more of that money stays and recirculates in the local economy. And I'm going to drill down on that and explain to you what I mean by that. But that's why I work to support local business ownership. The other thing I want to explain to you is that local does not equate to small. A lot of times people say to me, oh, you're all about those small businesses. Well, yeah, we have a lot of small businesses. We also have some of the biggest companies in Arizona in our coalition because they're still locally owned. So we have a giant grocery chain that has 180 stores because they're still family owned and operated. They never went public. Okay, we've got a huge dairy farm that distributes throughout the U.S. They're still family owned and operated, called Shamrock. So we're not all small, We're about local ownership. The owners need to live in our community, and they still have to be privately held. So today there are 145 coalitions across North America of locally owned businesses linking arms and working together to create a healthy and more diverse economy. 75% of consumers last holiday season reported they were thinking more about buying locally. 100,000 businesses in the U.S. have joined buy local movements across the country, okay? So on our website, you guys had this here for Fairbanks First, but on our website, we ask people to pledge 10% of their spending to locally owned businesses. So we're talking about shifting 10%. So if you spend 20% of your dollars with locally owned businesses today, we want you to get to 30%. So we have a website that takes people pledging, and that website has had over $62 million pledged on our website, and that's just primarily in the greater Phoenix area. So our website directory with locally owned businesses gets searched 65,000 times a month. Now that's not people just hitting the website, that's actually people using the search box to find local companies. That's a whole lot of people looking for local solutions. We've built up a network of about 180,000 social media followers, and last year at the national level, right down here at the bottom, locally owned businesses reported their sales were up 6.7% versus national chains reported they were up only 4.1%. Now, I'm not going to just be talking about chains and retail in this conversation. I'm going to start talking to you about how to get strategies, because we've got a lot of business service providers in the room and a wide variety of business owners. So this study was done in 2002, and I just referenced it. 3 times more money stays right here in Alaska when somebody chooses to support an Alaska company. Why is that? Because the local business does more business locally, and I'll drill down on that for you. Because local businesses give more in terms of percentage of their sales to local charities. Because local business doesn't take subsidies and use them to fund corporate needs somewhere else. There's a lot of reasons for that. But don't ever forget that 3 times more money stays and recirculates here. So some of you saw this in my last session, but I'm going to highlight it because for those of you who weren't here, I want you to better understand how the economy works when people spend money in terms of that consumer-based spending. So a lot of folks think I'm going to pick on Starbucks here, but I'm actually not. Starbucks is, as far as chains goes, they're about as good as it gets, okay? Starbucks is not in the business of subsidies. They pay their own way. They don't come in and demand that we pay them to set up shop here, okay? Starbucks actually pays for the health care of their employees. Many, many, many chain stores do not do that, okay? I always use an example like Staples or Office Max. Those two have 63 to 65% part-time employees with no health care benefits at all, okay? When those employees have no health care benefits, they end up on largely, taxpayer subsidized for their health care. So we like to say in the business world, that means their pricing is not cheaper, it just is deferred billing. We're paying for it in a completely different way. So I put this up here to get folks thinking about where your money goes when you spend it. So this side represents 15 Starbucks locations, this side represents 15 independent coffee shops, okay? So let's talk about where your money goes when you spend it at a Starbucks. How many accountants have a job here, you think, because Starbucks does business here? Okay, the answer is none. How about graphic designers? Do they hire any graphic designers? How about website developers or payroll service providers or attorneys? Okay, the answer is 0. It's a long list. They're called secondary jobs. Many of you are in that category of secondary jobs, meaning you supply the retailer, the restaurant, whatever it is that they need. When you have local business ownership, they hire you. Okay, so that makes the world go round, or not. Over here you got 15 accountants have a job, 15 graphic designers have a gig, 15 website developers, etc. Then we can talk about the third time the dollar moves through the economy when, let's say, the janitorial supply company keeps the offices clean of the accounting firm, and the accounting firm is only here because the local businesses hire them. okay? So bear with me, those of you who saw this, but I want to tell this story again because it really is important for those of you who are new, and there's about half of you who haven't heard this. But I was giving a talk just recently, and this woman that was sitting in the front row, she was a graphic designer. And she hit herself in the forehead right in the middle of my talk, just bam, right in the head. And I stopped and I said, oh my gosh, are you okay? And she said, yeah, she said, I have a graphic design firm. I used to have 7 employees. Today I have 5, and it's looking like next week I'm going to have to go down to 4. And it never occurred to me until right now that I've been spending all of my money with companies that will never hire me. Okay? This is how disconnected we've become. She was spending all of her money in big chain retailers and restaurants without realizing they don't need a local graphic designer, not ever. And so she realized she had to change her behavior and go out and support locally owned businesses so that they may build a relationship and they may actually hire her at some point, okay? So if we blow this up across the country, just blow it up across the country, we could have 30,000 Starbucks locations, and they're still only going to have 1 accountant. They're going to have 1 graphic designer. They're going to have 1 website developer, and on and on and on. And there's usually somebody in the room that's thinking, how embarrassing, she doesn't understand economy of scale. She must have slept through government and free enterprise, right? Is it cheaper to buy a latte at Starbucks? It is not. They may experience as a corporation economy of scale, but it is not passed on to consumers, okay? So really important that we understand that we as local businesses are critically important to our communities. They shouldn't come to you because they feel sorry. They shouldn't come to you because you expect it. I'm here to tell you they should come to you because you're better and because you're critically important to making this economy work, okay? So there's lots of ways we're going to work together to think about this. Now, again, this conversation is important to just get us all on the same playing field because local businesses play another key component to what makes communities great, and that is connection to place. So, true story, I was standing in line talking to a woman I'd never met before, and she was from Chicago. Well, in Arizona, we've got lots of folks from Chicago. And she was telling me how great Chicago is, and they all do. They're from Illinois, they come to Arizona, and they still feel really connected to Chicago. So this woman was chit-chatting with me. She's telling me how great Chicago is. And then at one point, she sort of leaned in, kind of confidentially, and she said to me, boy, you guys sure have made a mess out here in Arizona. And I got a little defensive about that. I was like, what's that supposed to mean, you know? And in my mind, I'm processing, and I said, oh, you guys, I said, you don't live here. She said, no, I live here. I said, oh, you haven't lived here very long then. And she said, no, I lived here 15 years. I said, so who the heck is you guys, right? You live here now. If things aren't going well, you're part of the team. And so I pushed back on her a little bit, and I discovered that she had never voted. She wasn't volunteering in our community. When she gave to gave to charity, she didn't give it locally. She gave it back in Chicago. So then I thought, wow, there's something to this. And I started knocking on doors, and I found everybody from Chicago that I could find, and I simply asked them why they love Chicago so much, okay? And they told me in a million different ways. They told me the locally owned businesses. Think about this. They said, I love the chefs in restaurants. They said, I love in my old neighborhood, I knew the owners. I could sit down at this coffee joint, and they would say to me, oh, you just want the regular? They said, in Chicago, I had the same barber that I've had for 40 years. They might have said, I bank at the same bank my great-grandparents banked at. All of those are different ways of saying the local business is why they feel rooted there, and they didn't even realize it. So you can take that same person out of that environment and move them to Phoenix, Arizona, and they end up at all the chains, and they don't feel connected. Now, I'm not criticizing the chains. I'm simply saying local business provides a level of nuance, a level of character, a level of familiarity, a level of knowing that those big stores will never be able to replicate. So thankfully, this study was done just last year that sort of underscores what we think. So the Knight Foundation put together a whole study that you can look up, Google it online, but they found that connection to place is the single most leading indicator in places that have prosperity. And then when people really love their place, they're more likely to vote, they're more likely to volunteer, they're more likely to give charitably. They're even more likely to pay their taxes without complaining because they know it's going to stay local. So it's really important that local business start thinking about what is your role within the context of a healthy Fairbanks or Alaska economy. It's very strong. So here we are, and we're going to start talking about how you can leverage your localness, given this whole national movement. And I want to underscore one other thing I said earlier that's really important. The world is changing. People want to know who they are doing business with, and they want a unique experience. This was made for us. If we're going to begin doing better, we just need to leverage what is inherently ours. Nobody else can touch it, okay? Really important that we start thinking about how are you identifying your business as local, okay? We talked earlier about craft beer sales. Anybody know what a chart of craft beer sales looks like over the last 10 years? Straight up. Overlay that with a chart of Budweiser sales, straight down. And that's largely two generations. It's baby boomers and millennials are both saying, we want something unique. We want something different. We will go out of our way to have that unique experience. And that means that we can do that. So how are you telling your customers or the business or the residents of this community that you're local? So it can be a sign on your wall. We see businesses add it to their receipts. We have one of our local theaters puts it on a slide. Because of you, 3 times more money is staying and recirculating in our local economy. Thank you. We know you have a lot of choices. Thank you for choosing us. Together, we're building a better community. How are you thanking your customers for making a smart choice? Okay? How are you thinking about what your non-local competition is doing? I'll give you an example. In my little music store, when I first heard that Best Buy was moving into town, I went and visited a whole bunch of Best Buys and I learned what they do. And I came home and I changed a little bit of what I do. First of all, my customer service is better. But there were certain artists, if they had 20 CDs out, I can't compete with them on price on everyday stuff. So I went underground. I started getting rare imports and stuff that Best Buy's never going to have. Plus I have used, which they're never going to have. And I just made sure that I only carried the most popular 2 or 3 titles from that artist, and everything else was mine and mine alone. They couldn't touch it, okay? Another good example on customer service. Go the extra mile. Go the extra mile, and we'll come up with some good conversations about that a little bit later in the day. But customer service is yours to own, and it matters to people. And it's mattering more and more and more. So using local statistics to close sales, I put this up here because sometimes we end up with a car dealership or somebody that has a big ticket item, and they can remind people that more money stays in the local economy. If they choose to order it far away, then you may not even be collecting sales tax here locally. Remind people what that sales tax goes for. Now imagine this. I was standing and talking to a woman, and she was bragging to me about doing all of her holiday shopping on Amazon, okay? And I wasn't going to say, believe it or not, I wasn't going to say anything. I don't like to harp. And I'm thinking to myself, man, people are just so disconnected from how the economy works. And then later in the conversation, it became apparent that her husband was a firefighter. So I said to her, that's an interesting strategy you have. So you're trying deliberately not to pay in to the coffers that actually fund your husband's salary. And her face just paled. It's not that she doesn't care. She never thought about it. We've forgotten. And local business needs to start reminding people about where that money goes, okay? So we're going to really drill down on these last two, telling your story and thinking like a team, collaborating. Telling your story is critically important. Again, I'm going to underscore, people want to know who they're doing business with. Are you doing a good job telling your story? So you need to think about, what do you have that people you're hoping to attract can't get or do closer to home? What separates you from all of your competition? Who is your competition? Who are your customers? Okay? What makes you worth a special trip? It's getting easier and easier and easier. Amazon Prime, you better get on your game. They are brutally competitive, and they're draining and depleting communities across the country. There's no secondary and tertiary jobs. There's a new study coming out that's showing Amazon actually across the board pays 9% less than Walmart. Okay? We need to be thinking about how we can do business together and link arms so that we have more self-reliance. Okay? What sets you apart from everyone else? How are you unique? Okay? A brand is just a perception. It's not your logo or tagline. It's, what are people saying about your business when you're not in the room? What are people saying about you? You need to know what it is. It can be an anonymous survey, whatever that is. Ask people to tell you the truth, really. That's where you're going to find out how you can improve, okay? What is it that the people who patronize your business right now, what do they love about your business? What do they love about your business? Figure out what that is and how to grow it. So because if they're with you right now, they got to love that, whatever it is. You need to water that and watch it grow, okay? A lot of people don't think about it. Well, I do these 6 things, but all of my business is only these 2 things. Well, then why do you still have those 4 things? Either you're not doing it well, people don't need it. You need to assess that. Don't just keep doing the same things over and over again. Change it in response to what you're seeing in the marketplace. So we're going to drill down on telling your story. So many people on their website talk about what they do. We all talk about what we do. But people want to know why you do it. It's a big difference. I recommend a TED Talk that's called, it's by Simon Sinek. Are you all familiar with TED Talks? S-I-N-E-K, Simon Sinek. And it's all about the why, okay? Apple doesn't say we sell computers, they sell exquisite design. We have a tire shop in Local First, Arizona. They used to say, we sell tires. Yeah, we sell tires, it's what we do. We got a hold of them, and you want to know what we found out about this family? One of their children was killed when a car they were riding in blew a tire. Okay? Their story is now, we sell peace of mind for you and your family. And I drilled down on them a little bit more, and you know what I found out? They bought a big 18-wheeler tire shop right off the freeway in a really rough part of town. And they had a dirt lot next to their tire shop, just sitting there. And they decided to put in a community garden. And they invite all the neighborhood kids to come, and they turned it into a salsa garden. It's primarily a Latino area in town. And they grow all the ingredients for salsa, and they harvest it twice a year, and they make salsa as a community. That was not even on their website. So now that you know these things, you're like, just take my wallet. I'm never buying any tires from anybody but you. They were not telling their story. Can you imagine their website saying, we sell tires? No, you don't. You sell community. You sell peace of mind for families and parents. Don't forget to tell your story. Who are you really? Don't forget to tell people what charities you support. Don't forget to tell people that you volunteer. Okay? Maybe you do something for your referee on the weekends. You know, it doesn't have to be in a brag kind of a way. It has to be, oh, and by the way, see you at the game. I volunteer every weekend. You're reminding people, my kids go to the same school as your kids. We're in this together. How are you telling your story on your website? So again, we're going to talk about job quality. We're going to talk about charitable contributions. And a lot of you maybe, we get hit up a lot, local business, for charitable contributions. Think about it this way. If you put on your website, these are the charities we give to, these are our priorities, it actually tells people, yeah, they don't give to what we do. Here's their priorities. This is what they give to. And maybe I don't fit. So a lot of people think, well, I don't want to tell them I give to charity because then I get a huge line at my door. And we all do. There's not enough money in the world to go around for the need that is out there right now. But if you tell them what your priorities are, it makes sense to everyone. Okay? So think about it that way. Commitment. Talk about your commitment to this community because your non-local competition can't touch that. They can't touch it, and it matters. Don't forget that. And the additional tax revenue that you're creating. So for people that like to brag about shopping on Amazon and not paying their sales tax, I know you don't have all kinds of taxes here, but in a lot of places I just remind them that we all can't be sad when our property taxes go up, right? You got to have money to run your police department and your fire department and all those things, those services that come to the community. Talk about that. Don't put people down for the choices they make, but tell them how it's better if they do it your way, okay? So one of the things that I want you thinking about as local business owners is to think about how you define your region. So you might define it as the county here, the borough. You might define it just as the community. You might define it as just on college. You might define it as just the strip mall where your business is. There's a lot of different ways to think about where your customers are coming from and who in your region you might be able to partner with or collaborate with. So the first thing you got to do is think, what is my region? How would I define my region as a business? Is it everywhere? Is it just this area? What am I targeting? Who can I link arms with and partner with? Super important that you define your region as it works for you so you know who it is you're reaching out to. So I'm going to give you some examples about business collaboration. Okay, these are two long-standing Arizona companies. One of them is a restaurant called the Duck and Decanter, and they have a nice wine selection. And the other is our longest-running independent bookstore in the community. Now, I wasn't thinking about working with either of them. I was thinking about building local business sort of loyalty, if you will. And then I picked up the local weekly paper and I opened it up and I saw a full-page ad for the Duck and Decanter that said, celebrating 40 years in business, family-owned and operated. Okay? Directly across in the same paper was another full-page ad that said, celebrating 35 years, Changing Hands Bookstore, family-owned and operated. You know how much it costs to run a full-page color ad in the weekly in Phoenix? $4,800. So I picked up the phone and I called them both. I said, hey, you guys talk to each other? And they were like, no, I saw their ad, but I've never talked to them before. So I called them into a meeting. I said, we got to figure this out because you guys are spending way too much money and you're both celebrating these milestones, okay? So what we discovered, I said, what keeps you up at night? What is the thing that keeps you up at night? Well, Changing Hands was having a really hard time getting people to come to their author readings, the author signings. And they said, our attendance is going down and down and down and down, and we're starting to sweat because if the word gets out to other authors, then fewer and fewer people are going to come to Tempe, Arizona because nobody's showing up. And we don't want it, we got to figure out how to turn this thing around. And I looked at Duck and Decanter and I said, what is it that's bugging you right now? And they said, we can't get anybody to try Arizona wines to save our lives. Like we really are struggling. We want to support Arizona wines, and people here have low self-esteem, and it's like paste pecani sauce. Arizona wines, like they won't even try it, right? But in northern Arizona, we've got this incredible opportunity. I mean, the people that were in Napa 40 years ago say this is just what happened to us. Same thing, it's happening. But the people in Arizona are like, oh, talk to the hand. So we developed a whole series of author signing events in the courtyard at Duck and Decanter, and we brought in the wineries. We brought in the wineries to actually pour their own wine, to talk about what they were doing, to tell their story. What do you think happened? They went about changing their entire year's worth of promotion and marketing around collaboration. They quadrupled their participation, and they cut their budgets in half. Now, you wouldn't think, like, how is this restaurant and this bookstore that aren't even necessarily close to one another think about what collaboration might look like? So I'm going to give you a few different ideas about collaboration. So this one is in northern Arizona, up in the Flagstaff region. They have three, you guys can relate to this, three places that are locally owned that are like all outdoor sports, recreation, fishing, tackle, all of that stuff. Three of them that are locally owned. And while they weren't like hostile toward one another, they definitely viewed each other as competition, and they may refer people over once in a while, but largely it was sort of like, what's that guy doing? Well, what's that guy doing? And they kind of competed with each other until that fateful day that REI announced they were going to come and plunk down right in the middle of all of them. And then suddenly they were friends again. And they started calling each other, and they started trying to figure out, hey man, are you worried about this REI coming? And they all said, yeah, I'm really worried because I don't know if our customers are going to stay loyal. So they reached out to the breweries in Flagstaff, and they said, hey, we're thinking about putting this whole event together called Beer and Gear. And so it has turned into the biggest, most successful event in northern Arizona. And it's just those three retailers and all of their breweries coming out to remind folks, we are the local brand of this place. So this is an example about how local businesses can coexist and not collaborate. And when somebody moves in and shifts the energy just a little bit, suddenly they are really good collaborators. So maybe it would behoove you to reach out to somebody before it gets a little dangerous to see who you might be collaborating with. Here's a few other examples. We have a local theater partnering with our local tire guy. If your car is going to be in his shop for more than 2 hours, you get free tickets and a lift to the movie theater around the corner. In exchange, the movie theater gives him, free tickets and some advertising. He gives some advertising, they swap, right? Very little out-of-pocket cost, but man, customer service through the roof. You don't have to sit there in a crappy chair and listen to Jerry Springer, right? Or whoever else is on in the middle of the day. Okay, Community Tire partners with our hometown grocery store. They give gift cards out regularly as prizes and gifts to their best customers as well as all of their employees. Bashes in exchange gives them advertisement on the bags at the grocery store. They swap. Okay, Bookman's up here, they do a Twitter treasure hunt every year that includes at least a dozen other locally owned businesses in their region. Again, they define their region as central and uptown in our community. They went out and find 12 businesses. They give out tweets that tell you where you can get these cool packages. And they're packages that include high-ticket items and some tickets to really cool sold-out shows and things like that. So in my record store, in the back, I've got a book and magazine rack. My store is called Stinkweeds. Okay? It's a fun name that people never forget. So the tweet they sent out for me was, in the back, in the books, in the weeds. And so, I had 50 people come running into my store to try to find these tickets to a sold-out show. So these are ways that we can begin working together, not necessarily with businesses that are just like us, but businesses that are interested in collaborating and driving new customers in. Every one of those customers that came running in, even if they didn't win, they were like, oh, this is cool, I've never been in here before. And they hung out a little bit and they learned about our store. And it gave us an opportunity. Another example is our bookstore does a Where's Waldo thing for the kids in the neighborhood. And all the businesses have a little tiny 5-inch Where is Waldo, like the little Waldo character that we hide in our stores. And the kids come in and they have a little piece of paper that they check off all the stores where they found Waldo. And what that does for me is I get to stand there and talk to parents or grandparents who have never been in my store before and tell them about what we do while their kid looks around and I yell hotter, hotter, colder, colder. Right? It's a way that we meet each other and build community. Another thing that we did at Local First is we just launched a program in a rural town that's called Science Happens Here. Okay? The rural town was experiencing massive amounts of economic leakage. Everybody was saving up their money and going to the next town over. Everybody was shopping on Amazon, and the businesses were really struggling. So we created a program in partnership with the teachers who recognized their revenue is going down because there's not as much activity happening in the community. There's more vacancy, there's less property tax revenue, whatever it might be. It's less and less and less. So we partnered with the teachers, and now we have 32 businesses that have a sign in their window that says science happens here, and the kids get extra credit for visiting those stores. No purchase is necessary, but they go into the stores. And so the cafe has the Science of Caffeine card where you collect it like a trading card. And there's experiments that the kids can try at home that teach you about caffeine. There's the Science of Yeast at the bakery. There's the Science of Oils at the automobile guy. On and on and on, the science of sound waves. And the kids get to try experiments, and it drives more people into those businesses. Tons into our print shop says, man, I didn't know I could do screen printing here, right here in this little town. Parents are learning. You know, the guy that owns the shoe shop, we gave him the science of fabrics. He goes, I can't tell you how many parents came in here and went, I had no idea you had this good of a selection in here. They'd never even been in it, right? So sometimes thinking about big collaborations like that can make a big difference. And then we have this tiny little woman that does tutoring for kids. Bookman's promotes her business to their customers, and she in turn, any kid that gets an A on a test gets a Bookman's $5 gift card, which they sell to her at $2. So it's, you know, these kinds of exchanges are doable, they're real, and they make people realize, wow, these are my local business partners, okay? So now I'm going to talk to you about my background and what I did. This is the inside of my art gallery. When I opened this art gallery, it was in a blighted and forgotten neighborhood in central Phoenix called Roosevelt Street. And Roosevelt Street had a hubcap shop and a liquor store. Those were the only two existing businesses on the street. And everybody said this will never work. And we were so off the hook busy. We had 3 to 5 performances a night, 5 to 7 nights a week for 12 straight years. And in that time, I watched the neighborhood around me transform. Today we are one of the top 10 arts districts in the country, and our art walk, which used to be me and about 100 friends going, woo, you know, we got a little party down here, is 30,000 people in 12 years. That's not a story about me, it's a story about collaboration. So, after being down there by myself for about a year and a half, it was very rough. There wasn't a whole lot else going on. It was pitch black. The city turned off the street lights. We had no street sweepers. They thought they were going to be able to blade the whole neighborhood. And then I opened up. I bought my property and opened up, and it changed the entire trajectory of that downtown core. So the second guy opened up after about a year and a half later, and I'll never forget it. He walked in with his wife, and he was kind of sheepish. I said, what's going on? He said, would you be mad at me if I opened up an art gallery right next door? What do you think I did? I jumped up and I hugged him. Now, a lot of times in business, it's like, you think it's competition. Some guy plunking down right next to you, right? 2 art galleries is better than 1. Now we're more of a destination, right? And then the third guy came in and said, hey, I'm thinking about opening a cafe, and I might just do it right across the street. So we cheered him on too. Now we have 2 art galleries and some wine. Boom! Now we got something, right? So here we are, and we're marketing, and we're working, and we're growing, and then growing and growing, and we ended up with 25 art galleries, 5 restaurants, 3 coffee shops, a few retailers, and an arts district. Okay? Really important that we think about what would have happened. And you're going to think I'm joking, but this happens all the time. What if that second guy had not come in and talked to me? What if that second guy had sat there and said to himself, I don't know what that lady's thinking about First Friday Art Walk. I'm all about second Saturdays over here. I'm doing second Saturdays. And what if that third guy hadn't talked to either of us, and he had gone, I'm all about ladies' night on Wednesdays? I would not be standing here talking to you right now, because we would have never been able to build an arts district if we weren't collaborating. Never, ever, ever. And I can't tell you how hard we worked to put ourselves on the map. The city wanted to tear us down so bad. The city wanted to put up a stadium on our neighborhood. But that's what it takes. We linked arms and we transformed a community. And I joke about what would have happened, but I see that happen all the time. The lack of collaboration among small businesses can sometimes be painful to watch. Here's another example, Medlock Plaza. This is a little tiny strip center. This is my record store right in the middle of it. This is actually condominium retail, and that means that each one of us is a property owner. It's not like a typical strip mall with one single property owner that's far away, or maybe one of them owns it. We each own our own property. When I got here, these other ones were all abandoned, and there was just me there in the middle. In the back door, when I bought it, had been kicked in. There were bullet holes in the glass. And again, people said, you left the Arizona State University campus to open up here? Are you crazy? Well, I was able to buy the property, and I believe that if you do something well, other people will move in around you. And sure enough, this woman that opens up a women's clothing boutique, she loved what I was doing, and she brought her property and opened up. And then over here, another guy bought this one. This is a kids' candy store. This is a Japanese figurines. And over here, there's two businesses in here. There's Arizona Hi-Fi, which their median sale is about $5 grand. They sell high-end audio equipment, and a piercing place. So again, underground music store, women's clothing boutique, Japanese figurines, kids having a second grade birthday party, and a piercing place and a high-end stereo store. What on earth could we have in common? Nothing, other than we're geographically close to each other. So we reached out and we put together a plan. Working together, we started an entire campaign called Unique Gifts 6 Ways. No matter who's in your family, we got something for you. And we named ourselves Medlock Plaza. We didn't have a name before. We hired a local artist to do the drawing that you're looking at right now, and we began buying ads that I never would have been able to afford on my own. Never, never, never. So we linked arms, even though we don't necessarily have anything directly. I mean, the piercing place and the candy store, it's kind of a stretch, but it worked. It worked. So think about who is in your region and how you can partner. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about customer service and having more expertise on staff. So in my record store, I had a guy one time, and he was looking around my store, and he was kind of wandering, and he looked confused. And after the third time I asked him if he needed any help, and he kept saying no, I kept saying, come on, what is it you're looking for? He goes, well, all right, I'm a little embarrassed. I said, don't be embarrassed, just tell me what you're looking for. And he said, well, I wanted to make a mixtape for my girlfriend, and I'm trying to find love songs, and I don't really know what to get. And this guy was like 17 years old. And so I sat there with him for maybe 45 minutes, and I played stuff, and I picked out stuff, and he ended up buying a stack of CDs that big. He was very excited about it. And as he was getting ready to leave, he had his hand on the door, and he turned back to me, and he said, I wonder what would have happened if I'd asked that same question in Best Buy. Right? And I thought, there's my ad, right there. And so we can do this. Another good example, and I have a rural, one of the times I do a workshop just on customer service. And I start by asking who out here, who in the audience has ever written a nastygram? Like that you've had a terrible experience and you write in, I call it a nastygram. I sent one to American Airlines one time. My plane got delayed, and they loaded us onto the plane and off the plane, and then they loaded us back onto the plane, and then they said, sorry, it's not fixed, go back. And they loaded us off the plane. I'm not making this up. They loaded us on the plane the third time, and then they canceled the flight, and all 280 people descended on 2 scared clerks to try to help us figure out where we were going to go. We ended up having to stay overnight, and they gave me a $10 coupon for breakfast. You know how infuriating that is? So I wrote a letter just saying, hey, guys, you're not going to make it if you don't improve your customer service. Here's 10 ways you could have made that experience better. And they responded with a generic form letter that basically said, we're sorry you feel that way. Here's a coupon for a Ben & Jerry's ice cream. now my head is going to explode with rage, and I pledge to tell everyone I've ever met that not to fly on American Airlines. You know, like, not literally, but I mean, that's literally what happens. We know that when customers have a great experience, they're likely to tell 3 people. When they have a bad experience, they're likely to tell 7 to 11 people. So how do we make sure we're delivering great customer service? I'll give you an example. In a small town in Arizona called Globe, Miami, we had a woman who actually taught customer service classes. She was coming home from her business and just had a miserable, rotten experience at the local grocery store. Small town, she walked in, she's like, I didn't even want anything weird or out of the ordinary, I just wanted basics. And they didn't have any of it. They didn't have bread, they didn't have eggs, they didn't have milk, they didn't have anything. And she went home and sent a nasty gram to that store manager. And again, small town, everybody knows everybody. What do you think he did? He showed up on her doorstep in 20 minutes with bags of groceries. And he said, I had the merchandise, I had 3 people call in sick and I couldn't get it out on the floor. And I was trying to talk to my customers and I missed you and I'm so sorry. What do you think happened? She's like a customer for life. Are you kidding me? She goes out and tells everybody how amazing they are because of their customer service. Talk about a save. Now, a lot of small businesses, we're not active on social media because we think somebody might say something bad about our company. I hear that all the time. That's a myth. If they say something bad on Facebook about your company, believe me, they're going to say it whether you're there or not. If you're there, you at least have the opportunity to make it right, to go in and say, I am so sorry you had that experience. Your next dinner's on me. Whatever it is, fix it and fix it publicly so people go, oh yeah, they're human, they're there, they're watching, they care. Right? Really important that you go the extra mile. Have a wider variety. Know what your non-local competition is doing or any of your competition actually, and have a wider variety. Offer more services than they do. Please don't post your hours and then not be there. Oh, you're killing me. Please, this guy is freaking out. I know. I know. I know. Don't do it. Don't do it. You've got to be better than that. If we're going to turn the tide and have people choose local businesses, we've got to be convenient and consistent. We started what I call a sticky note campaign in a town that was trying to establish themselves as an antique destination. Small town. They had about 12 antique stores. The 2 biggest guys, they thought nothing of sticking that gone fishing, thing in the window on a Saturday afternoon. Hardy har har, right? Forget it. The other businesses were in tears, like we'll never be a successful district with our 2 biggest guys closed in the middle of the day, right when it's important. And so we did a sticky note campaign. And we gave sticky notes out to everybody that was on the street that came to visit for the antique district. We gave sticky notes to the other businesses. Anybody that tugs on one of those doors, leave them a sticky note. The only rule was no swearing. You might be disqualified. I know. So they left sticky notes like, I can see the desk I came down here to buy, but I'm not coming back. They said things like, I came here from Scottsdale and I'm really disappointed so many stores are closed, I'm not coming back. And so the main guy, he got it. He'd show up on a Monday morning, he had 36 sticky notes of angry people saying, I would have spent money here. So he started hiring his daughter to come in on Saturday if he wanted to go fishing. So get your business owners thinking alike. With my little gallery in the middle of a district, does it hurt being open on a Saturday afternoon in the middle of August? It's 120 degrees. Yeah, it hurts. But I do it because that is my commitment to my neighboring businesses, and we wouldn't have one of the top 10 arts districts in the country if half of us decided we couldn't do it or we wouldn't do it anymore. We got to find a way to do it. Keep your doors open when you say you're going to be there. I did a little secret Santa thing in a town called Bisbee. Their numbers kept going down and down and down and down. I'm going to share this with you because it's funny. It's not funny to them, but it's funny to me. I did a secret Santa thing so I could learn what was going on with their customer service. Okay, half the businesses were closed. I saw a tour bus pull in and unload a whole bunch of people, and half the businesses were closed. And then of the ones that were open, here was my experience. I went to door number 1. I walked in. The woman jumped up when I got there and turned on the lights. It was an art gallery. Didn't say a word to me. So I said, how you doing? She goes, fine. And she's waiting, and I'm looking at all the art, and I go to leave, and she turns out the lights again and sat down. Weird, right? Creepy. The next store I went into was a gift shop. And I said, oh, how you doing? Again, the guy doesn't greet me. I go, how you doing? And there's some stuff there. And I said, oh, these are neat. Are these made locally? And he goes, nope. I'm not making this up. I go to the third store, and the woman's chit-chatting with somebody and doesn't even recognize that I'm there. The whole time I was there, she was talking to somebody. I looked around her antique store and left, and they never even asked what I was looking for. You get my point. We can't expect people to support our businesses if our businesses aren't performing well. We've got to do better. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of other examples. The town of Bisbee, one of the ways that we work to collaborate is they had an event that's called Bisbee After 5. It's an art walk. And for the Bisbee After 5 art walk, they had tons of businesses actually participating. But they didn't have any way for an out-of-towner to tap into the vein of what's happening for Bisbee After 5. So they didn't know about Bisbee After 5, and if they're coming into town, they didn't know what was going on for Bisbee After 5. They hadn't collaborated. So we got them to create a Bisbee After 5 Facebook page. So when I got there, what would happen is the restaurant over here would say, here's what were our specials of the evening. The art gallery would say, the artist is going to be here signing things. They have a book out. This person over here said, we've got a drink special going on, whatever it might be. So I got them all to dump it onto one Facebook page so that if I'm an outsider and I find out about Bisbee After 5, I can see all these different things that are happening in that area. And then we took that page and we began marketing it as a team to a neighboring community to begin getting people to come over from that community into our community. And so we targeted people in the neighboring community between 35 and 55 years old and people who are interested in travel and the arts. On Facebook, you can really drill down on who you're, so everybody that was 35 to 55 interested in travel and the arts, they got an ad that popped up that said, Bisbee After 5, and come enjoy our art walk for the weekend, okay? The cost to the businesses was $5 each per month. That's an example of collaboration. Another example of collaboration in the city of Sedona. Sedona, they are a destination for weddings. They have beautiful, you heard of Sedona, big, huge red rocks, okay? They have a marketing campaign that all of their businesses there that benefit from weddings, everybody from the florist to the actual resorts and everybody in between. They chip in if they want to participate. Their ad campaign goes to everybody in the western United States. If you're west of the Mississippi, you get an ad. If you change your status from single to engaged, you change your status from single to engaged, you get an ad that pops up that says, are you planning a wedding? Their chamber spends about $100 a month total. And they estimate that they bring in at least 3 to 5 more weddings a year because of it. You know how much revenue that is? And it bleeds into all of those businesses that are participating. It's another example of collaboration. In Florence, to talk about an individual business, this woman, again with the weddings, she is out there in the middle of 2 big metropolitan areas, but it's about an hour 15 drive from anywhere. She had an old barn and 2 beautiful white horses when she started her business. She thought, well, I don't really have any marketing budget, what am I going to do? So we taught her to be the expert through social media. She started following people who do wedding gowns, so she could be able to tell people, here's what are the trending things in wedding gowns. She started following colors for weddings. She started following people who do design for weddings so she could repurpose this. Then we taught her to reach out to the local wineries. So now she has couples come out to see if they want to do their wedding there, and she has the wineries, they do all Arizona wines to taste them while they're there. She's now booked up with no marketing budget whatsoever. She is booked out 6 months in advance all the time because she was collaborating and strategically using social media. So that gives you a few highlights of different things that are happening. One last one, Cottonwood worked together to create a destination, a weekend getaway, designed at tourists. And again, don't think it just has to be here in Alaska. You could be targeting people on the other side of the world today. And they put together a package, a weekend getaway by one ticket price, and you get to have a breakfast, lunch, a dinner, so this kind of entertainment and whatever it might be. And we put it online and we marketed them using a map and a video, and that's all we had. And our goal was to sell 80 packages. We sold 700 packages for them before we had to pull it down because the town could not manage that kind of an influx. Again, this is low dollars ways that you can promote. In the town of Ajo, Ajo's 2,700 people, the median income is $17,000. They have incredible biking trails. They don't have a bike shop, but they wanted to get the word out to people about cycling, but then they're so hot. In Ajo, it gets to be 124 degrees in the summertime. It's in the desert. Well, it turns out that there's a trend happening in Europe right now that cycling, it's called extreme sports, and the cyclists think that if they can train under most extreme conditions, that they will be more successful when the races come. So now they have a whole ad campaign saying, you want hot, we got hot. And it's aimed at Germans. And they got Germans, not a huge number of them. I'm not trying to paint a huge picture here, but I think they had last year 12 Germans come through to ride the trails of Ajo, all using Facebook. Okay, you can really drill down on who you're trying to reach. And I know that a lot of you in here may be thinking, I'm not in tourism, but all of that trickles down. There's lots of money that stays and recirculates and changes hands when tourism goes up.